This week's episode is all about happiness. Trish and I interview Christy Holt, who is the author of the book Unstuck for Women, Run for Your Life. It is a hilarious and real conversation about what happiness really is and how we're all trying to get there. What does that really mean? How do we find happiness? Well, may not be the answers that you actually thought. So stay tuned for part one.
Welcome to the Wellness Empowerment Project. I'm Trish.
And I'm Julie. We are two nurses exploring holistic healing and wellness practices to empower you to be the leader of your own health. Join us as we try out new things, or as we call it, weird shit, and have some fun along the way.
Hi, welcome to the Wellness Empowerment Project. Today's episode, we are meeting with Christy Holt. She's a self-proclaimed happiness hussie and adventure guide, as well as a podcast host, and she is an international best-selling author of Unstuck for Women, Run for Your Life, and others that are all available. She is on a mission to create and spread awareness around happiness for the whole planet. Welcome, Christy.
Thank you so much for having me. I am super delighted to be here today and to share a little bit of my story and some of the really immense life lessons that I've picked up along my journey.
So tell us, Christy, how did you become a happiness hussy?
That's the question everyone always wants to know the answer to. It's actually a pretty fun and funny kind of story. It happened by accident. It came as my cousin was teasing me because I was sharing about something where I had said that I had interacted with someone who didn't quite see me as the positive beacon of light that I feel that I am on social media. They didn't receive it as quite so exciting. And let's be fair, it's not about me, that's about them. Anyways, this person had done this like up and down look at me and was just like, I see you on social media. It was such a weird tone. Anyways, I was relaying this incident to my cousin and she's, oh, you happiness hussy, how dare you be so positive? And I was like, oh, I love that. And I am going to steal that and I am going to henceforth become the one and only happiness hussy.
That is absolutely hysterical. I love
Yeah.
that story. You mentioned in there, though, that someone wasn't appreciating your happiness and ever the light that you're bringing through. And you said, obviously, it was more about them than it was about you. I would love for you to dive into that for us. I think so many times when someone is portraying us or has an impression of us that we don't think is really reflective of who we are,
Yeah.
I think usually we come back to, oh, what did I do wrong? What do I have to do differently? And clearly you were not coming from that place at all.
It's so easy to come from that place, isn't it? We are so conditioned our whole lives to believe what everyone around us is telling us. At a previous point in my life, I probably would have questioned it a whole lot more. There's a few things to this. Number one, I really made the realization that happy people have no reason, absolutely none whatsoever, to be critical of other people or to be hurtful or even to be really negative about someone else. If they did have meaningful feedback, they would, if they're happy, deliver it in a way that was really loving and gentle and kind, not in a rude or hurtful or flippant kind of way, right? That's just the energy behind the delivery tells you everything about whether it's actually about you or whether it's actually a projection of their own insecurities coming to play. Now, I will say this is not always something that the person is aware of. They might not even recognize that it's their own insecurities coming out. But I think it's fair to say that if you're a happy person, you just absolutely don't go around giving people side eyes. You don't go around giving them the up and down look. You don't go around criticizing or pointing out their flaws. That's just not what happy people do. There's just really no need for that. The other piece of it is on the receiving end. What I really started to realize over time is that if I'm bothered by something, the truth is it's not really about what they have said. It's about that I believe that there's some ounce of it that could be true. Because here's the thing, I tell my kids this all the time. If someone said, hey, your purple hair looks funny, they'd just be like, what? I don't have purple hair. Like, that person don't know what they're talking about. But if they said, hey, your hair looks funny, they start to question maybe, does my hair look funny? There's like a potential bit of truth in that. And if it's really outlandish, you just think, clearly that person's off the rocker. They don't have a clue what they're even talking about. But if you are even responding to it in a way that has you maybe a little bit upset or even has you a bit questioning, that's actually an invitation to go inward to look within yourself because really you don't get bothered, you don't get triggered, you don't get upset by comments that you know are not the truth. If someone completely says something that you're like, that's not me, you just discount it. You don't get worried about it or upset about it. So there's the two pieces to this. If someone's saying something really, really critical to you, yes, you can take that opportunity and ask, was there something for me to take from this, even if the delivery was maybe horrible? And if there is, then great. That's still something for you to reflect on. It actually doesn't mean anything about that other person. It's always coming back to the opportunities you have to look within yourself.
That can be such a slippery slope when you have that nuance of potential truth. When you start to reflect on, okay, what is that nugget of truth? How can I use that to make myself a better person or to do things a little bit differently versus beating yourself over the head with a sledgehammer?
Absolutely. Yeah. That's not productive either, right?
When that can be such a slippery slope for folks, what are some good ways to be reflective and get that feedback versus running down that hill at top speed into beating yourself into the ground?
I'll tell you what I see is absolutely the missing link here that is missed, and it's not missed on purpose. It's the conditioning and the way that we've been raised. But the missing link to me is self compassion. Because the truth is that guilt, that shame, the negative, the problem focus actually only puts all of our energy into whatever we perceive that problem to be, that issue with ourselves, that perceived weakness. And instead of allowing us to blossom and grow, which as humans, we are here to do without a doubt, we're here to continuously grow and evolve, not because we need to become something better than who we are, because listen, we're already fucking magical and magnificent. So this isn't about constant striving to be better, but we are here to learn and grow and evolve. If we can apply that self compassion, that little bit of grace to ourselves as we are going through whatever maybe didn't work, it's not that we're a failure and it's so easy. I do know this firsthand because I have done this for a lot of years of my life to think that if I've made a mistake, maybe there's something wrong with me. Maybe I'm a failure. And I see this a lot because I speak a lot about relationships. I see this in dating. When it doesn't work out, the person thinks, what's wrong with me? I can't find the one. And it genuinely isn't to do with you. You just haven't found the right person for you. It actually doesn't mean there's anything bad or wrong with you. So adding this dose of self compassion to say, hey, I am human. I am perfectly imperfect, as we all are. And I'm learning and growing, and I'm doing the very best that I can with the resources and understanding that I have. I recognize it's so easy to look back. This is, I think, where the majority of the guilt and shame comes from. When we look back at our past mistakes and judge them from where we're standing now, I should have known better, but you didn't. At that time, I truly believe you were making the best decision in that moment. Now you're equipped with more information. So instead of beating yourself up or guilting or shaming yourself for making a quote unquote bad decision or the wrong choice or messing up, if you apply that self compassion, now you're armed with the ability to move forward and evolve, to take the lessons from what didn't work and not beat yourself up, but take those and use them so that you can do things differently next time. The reason that we so often miss this self compassion piece is because it's been drilled into us that's selfish, that it's wrong to love yourself. It's almost like we've been taught to try and aim for perfection. And if we fall short, there's something wrong with us. First of all, I don't know what this perfection would possibly even look like. It's actually an impossible, elusive, illusory future version of you that actually the bar keeps getting moved anyway. So you would never get there. If you can let go of this, if you can actually recognize that giving yourself that self compassion, that love, that acceptance for being human, that actually is you standing in your power to move forward differently. And that is far more effective than staying stuck in that loop of guilt or shame or quote unquote failure. I don't really believe we're actually ever failing. I think we're either getting the outcome we desire or we're learning. If we can shift that perspective, we can just move forward with all of that grace that we truly deserve.
Wow, that's a really good answer. It makes me think that happiness needs to be tied to self compassion in some
Absolutely.
way. If someone wants to cultivate self compassion, I feel like you need self compassion in order to gain happiness. It's almost like a roadmap.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that? Is there some sort of roadmap towards happiness? And what does that look like? How do you even cultivate the self compassion to help you get there?
I really think that the biggest component to our happiness is living in a way that is authentic to ourselves. And because of the many years the conditioning starts the moment we're born, I'll say for women, there is so much expectation for us to be gentle and nurturing and soft. All of these extremely feminine qualities, there's absolutely nothing wrong with those. They're actually beautiful gifts. But we are often conditioned to go so far into the good girl, nice role that we are abandoning ourselves in the process. So by becoming, not really becoming, by being authentically ourselves, we become more happy. We actually find that happiness that exists in the here now moment, which is truly all we really have. We in the future, when we get to the future, it will also be here and now. The only way to truly cultivate happiness is to learn how to do that in the present moment. And how do we do that? By showing up authentically as ourselves. There really is no other way. If we are being inauthentic, and there's really a spectrum, I'd say, of the authenticity, and I don't mean that you need to be completely vulnerable and put all of your stuff out there. Obviously, some discernment is required as far as what level of complete authenticity you are giving. But there's a difference between not laying it all on the line and doing something that is actually really out of alignment for you and being intentionally inauthentic, maybe to people please, maybe to keep the peace, maybe to appear nice, maybe to live up to all the quote unquote shoulds that society has put on us, all those expectations and rules and all of these things. Oftentimes we will abandon ourselves and what feels right and correct for ourselves in order to make other people happy. This is, I think, very much a result of a trauma response from the good girl conditioning where you're supposed to be nice. Good girls are nice to people. I take issue with the word nice. Okay, I don't think it's like bad or wrong because I don't really think that's really a thing. But nice means pleasing and agreeable. And it is a slippery slope to self abandonment when we are doing things out of the interest of being pleasing and agreeable versus an energy of being kind, which kindness would reflect love not only for the other people, but for yourself as well. To me, this is the authenticity piece. Are you being kind and loving to yourself as well as other people? And yes, this leads into setting healthy boundaries, learning how to say no when it's not a fit for you, and not beating yourself up, having this self compassion because you're allowed to be you. In fact, that's the friggin' reason you're here is to be you. There's only one of you. You're magical. When we stop wearing masks and trying to impress other people or show up as we think other people would want us to, we start to step into being fully, wholly ourselves. That is truly where the magic happens.
I love the nuance between being nice and being kind, because when you're being kind, there is some element of boundaries that
Mhm.
come with kindness. As a woman, I can fully understand and relate to you're going through so many different roles in your life. If you're married, if you're a parent, if you are working, if you have siblings, if you have elderly parents, there's all of these different hats that women wear.
Yeah.
And many times women just are going. Then all of a sudden they turn around and they don't even know who their authentic self is anymore
Um,
because they've put on so many different hats and they're trying to take care of everybody else. I can relate to that
Yeah.
being stuck in that place because there's so many expectations from so many people. What's a good way to start to find your way out of that?
There's nothing in life is linear. It's always a bit of a troubleshooting process, but I very much found myself in that situation about 7 or 8 years ago. I was in my marriage, my previous relationship, I was really unhappy. It was a really unhealthy relationship. It really wasn't working. I was a mom of 3 young boys. They were born within 3 years of one another. I look back and I refer to this era of my life as suffering from just a mom-itis, which really was to say outside of my role as mother, I didn't know who the hell I was anymore. I had some labels, I had some roles, I had some of these identities that had been given to me. When I was working, I previously had, before kids, had worked as a professional accountant. I had found when you're working, you get this sort of validation from your employer, and you feel like there's value there. In my marriage, I completely lost track of that. Like there was no performance review, I wasn't being paid for anything. I felt really unvalued in my relationship. And that is also partly due to the relationship that I had with my husband, which I take responsibility for my component in that. And what actually caused things to shift was when I stopped pointing fingers at him, when I stopped blaming him and wishing that he would change and maybe complaining to my girlfriends about what he'd done again. As soon as I started looking at myself, I actually had this sort of aha, holy shit moment where I realized, oh my God, I'm the common denominator in every single one of my problems. And it was, oh my gosh, it's me, channeling Taylor Swift. Hi, I'm the problem. It's me. And then I also, at the same time, probably a few moments later, because this could have gone into that slippery slope of, oh my God, it's me. I'm a terrible person. What have I done? Thankfully, at the same time, I really realized I am also the common denominator in all of the potential solutions. I am involved in every one of them. So if I just use this involvement in a positive way, I can start to affect change. So I started to get curious about who I was. I went on a self discovery journey, if you will, to find out, well, who the hell am I without these labels, without these identities, without these roles, without just being Jaden's mom, who I'm sure I was in many people's phones as such, or as my other kids' mom, without my own name. But I started to just get curious about the beliefs that I had about myself, the beliefs that I had about my place in the world, my beliefs that I had about my relationship to my husband at the time and my kids. I started to get curious about what really was going to light my soul on fire. And I really had a hard time at first. As I was navigating this period in my relationship, I was seeing a therapist. She helped me over a very big hump, and it was to create a list of what an ideal relationship would look like for me, because I knew I was not in it. I very clearly could say, this is not it. These are all the things that I don't want. But I really had a hard time shifting that from what I don't want to what I do want. She really helped me over that hump. I think the two barriers were my self-worth was wrapped up in that relationship. It was definitely a bit of codependence and some patterns, attachment stuff kind of playing out there. As well, I felt like if I had these desires, meanwhile knowing that I didn't think my partner at the time was it, that I was basically writing the final death sentence on my relationship. Thankfully, she helped me to see that I could actually just desire things and it didn't have to mean anything. Pressure off. I was able to create this list of what would an ideal relationship actually look like for me. It wasn't about what the other person looked like or physical characteristics or even like financial characteristics, any of those things. It was about how I was going to feel in that relationship and what our interactions would be like. And I'll tell you what, I tucked this list away thinking, I don't know if this is ever going to happen, but here's what it is. I went through a divorce because the more I got to know myself, the more I just started to realize that it wasn't in alignment for me to stay in that relationship anymore. And that's the unfortunate thing, that sometimes we are in relationships that were not right for us. It's not about right or wrong, but it's really about being in alignment, as I say, because at some point you just realize this isn't working. So it's not, oh, this is terrible and oh, this is a horrible human being. It's just, this isn't actually working for me and I am going to choose something different. And so I chose myself. I left the marriage. I'm fast forwarding through a little bit of this, but I found that human that matches that list. And we are approaching 6 years together. It is the absolute most amazing relationship. He is my best friend, my biggest cheerleader, my adventure buddy. And at 6 years together, we still can't keep our hands off each other. This is literally what I had in that initial list for what I truly desired. If you take that time to just get to know yourself, ask yourself who you are. The answer that I came to at the end of the day is, who am I without all of those labels? I am love. I am the energy and essence of love, and anything else is ultimately potentially a distraction. The way that I see things is that our intended nature, our intended state of being is one of love, peace, joy, happiness. Peace is our intended state. Anything that interrupts that peace is really not the truth. It's actually a distraction. Rather than trying to go beyond that and find and seek the happiness and love and peace beyond it, we actually need to come back into ourselves because that's where it's been all along. The more seeking and chasing that we do of things outside of ourselves, the further we get from the truth because frankly, we're just looking in the wrong places.
Christy, you and Julie were talking. I was even just going through my mind the different roles and titles that come just through a normal day. You can get up and you're briefly wife, and then you're a mom, and then you run into work and your boss. Oh, but then you're actually colleague when you're meeting with someone else. And then, your employee meeting with your boss. And you're going to be interchanging between those roles
Yep.
all throughout your day, only to get home and be wife and mom again. When that's like a typical day, when you're doing all these roles for all these other people, how did you start to break that cycle to actually come back to yourself and to create that space to get to know yourself?
Yes. I think that the starting point, I really talk about this in my book, Unstuck for Women, because having gone through it, I did start reflecting back and I started asking myself, what was it that helped me to break free from the anxiety and the overwhelm and the stress that I was feeling in that situation? There are a few things. And again, nothing is linear. This isn't, unfortunately, a 1, 2, 3 step process. It's all the steps combined and testing out what works for you. But the first piece to me was getting out of that state of overwhelm, which involved getting my nervous system regulated so that I wasn't functioning in survival mode all of the time. I was essentially vacillating between I wasn't really a fighter, but all the other ones, the flight, the freeze, and the fawn. Oh yeah, I was like master of all of those. Really, the first piece for me was regulating my nervous system so that I could start to shift out of survival mode reactions all of the time and start choosing with more intention the risk that I wanted to have. Was a little bit more conscious, a little bit more intentional with how I wanted to show up. I think that we're all probably operating in survival mode far more than we were intended to. This is a natural consequence of this fast paced society we live in. The technology is coming at us a bazillion miles an hour. It's so much information that we don't necessarily have time to reflect on it all. Pair that with the fact that emotional intelligence is something that we weren't really taught as small children and our parents weren't taught. So there's a lot of people that felt really uncomfortable with difficult emotions raising children who then were told that their emotions were too much and to be quiet. Now we have all of these emotions that we've stuffed down, us and previous generations worth of emotion stuffed down and avoided. Women, especially, it's anger. We're not supposed to be angry. We're supposed to be nice. We're supposed to be soft and gentle and nice. We've stuffed down anything that was uncomfortable because out of fear that we would look too much. I don't know anybody out there who didn't have a tantrum as a toddler and whose parents told them to calm down. You're too much. It's not that anyone's doing it on purpose, but our awareness of this allows us to start to feel those emotions. And the truth is, emotions move through our body less than 90 seconds. We know we can do hard things. We have done it before. And mothers, oh my gosh, we've done lots of hard things before. If you're raising children on a regular basis, how challenging it can be to manage your emotions. But rather than just simply stuffing them down, if we can allow ourselves to feel them, often acknowledging what that's about, but not building a story around it and not judging ourselves around it. Because I think that's where we end up in the spiral. In my book, I do talk about what I call the spiral stopper method. It's ultimately shutting down that negative thought and emotional spiral that can take us from an initial emotion into a shitstorm of anxiety and overwhelm and all the things that actually land us back in that survival thing and keep us stuck there in that survival mode. If we can first get out of survival mode, now we can start to do things differently. We can start to choose, how do I actually want to show up when this type of situation arises? My child is having a problem. Do I want to react in a frustrated way because I'm frustrated that they didn't listen to me? Or do I want to maybe start to respond with more patience and more gentleness and more kindness, recognizing that I am here to guide them? I'm here to direct them. I'm not here to tell them what they've done wrong. And we know from firsthand experience that usually doesn't work. But starting to shift into our conscious response of these things. And the more that we do this, the more we can try things out, right? We try a response. How does that feel for us? Does it feel aligned? Did I feel good about that response? Great. Now I've learned something. Or if I didn't, again, without the beating up, with the self-compassion that we're always learning and growing and evolving, how am I to do it differently next time? The more that we do this, the more we'll be on this pathway to not only create those better relationships, those better interactions, but to really get to know who we are and to express ourselves in a way that truly feels authentic and aligned for us.
Just thinking about everything that you just said, that sounds like you really are starting with the internal work and slowing your system down so that your reactions are more responses instead of reactions.
Yeah.
I think also that another piece is being able to express what your needs are. Slowing down enough to know, okay, what choice do I have in this situation?
Yeah.
But then also making that leap to not only recognizing what you want, but then being able to express it and feeling like you're valued enough in order for someone to hear it, respond to you. Before we hear Christy's response, I'm going to pause us right here. In next episode, we start to discuss how to unlearn unhealthy patterns in your life so that you can shift into a place where you're able to recognize who you really are in that moment and what your needs are so that you can communicate them and have more peaceful relationships with others in your life. Check out the show notes where I will have all of Christy's information so you can find her on socials and if you would like to connect with her. Have a great week.
Thanks for joining. If you enjoyed this episode, please follow, subscribe, and share with a friend. Want to learn more about a specific topic? Drop us a line on our website and we can explore it deeper with you.